Let's do it live. What's up, guys? Thanks for clicking on this video and watching. I really do appreciate you guys still hanging on. I know it's been a while since I posted a video. I've been super busy. We just had our second kiddo in March, a little girl. So we've got two kiddos at home, a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old now. Got our hands tied with babies, and on top of that, I became a real estate agent, and I'm still running my photography and videography business. So super busy. But on that note, if you guys are interested in any hunting land, buying, selling, or any home or anything like that here in the state of Missouri, I'd love to be a realtor. I've lived here my whole life. I know a lot of these markets, so I'd love to work with you guys. On today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about some early season tactics for drought years, because we've obviously had a really bad drought here in the Ozarks. We finally got a little bit of rain, but still pretty low water. Hope you guys enjoy. Like I said in the intro, I'm gonna be talking about some early season tactics on drought years. I feel like most of the country's probably been in a little bit of a drought. I know we have here in the Ozarks. We have finally had a little bit of rain the last week or so, and things are starting to green back up, but relatively speaking, we're pretty low on water. Depending upon where or how you hunt, we kind of focus on lake hunting on this channel. And honestly, it kind of depends upon which lake you're hunting as well. A drought can affect you in different ways. A lot of people look at a drought negatively. So I'm gonna try to kind of turn those perspectives around, because I try to focus on things that I can control, and a drought is, it's just out of my hands. So the deer are still there. The deer are still gonna be moving and feeding on particular things. For example, if you're a private landowner, you primarily just hunt over food plots. Well, maybe your summer food plots have not grown any, or the little bit that they have grown, the deer have just completely wiped them out. Sound pretty familiar? I know we're struggling with that on our private land that we have. That might be an opportunity for you to get out of your comfort zone and go out into timber and find out where the deer are, where they're bedding, what they're eating on. I look at some of these negatives as a positive, in my opinion, and I'm going to explain a little bit further. So, the first thing to consider with the drought would be acorn production. Now, no matter where you're hunting, this is going to affect you. Overall, it's probably a net negative for deer. If there's less acorns on the ground, meaning that's usually a primary food source, especially here in the Ozarks, that's probably considered a net negative. With that being said, no matter what lake I'm hunting on, I'm going to really be focusing on the white oaks that are dropping good acorns, because there's going to be some out there, I'm sure, that are still going to be dropping acorns. Now, there's not going to be as many. I guess the benefit as a hunter with less acorn production is if you do find that one big, beautiful, giant white oak that might be close enough to a riverbank that got plenty of water or whatever, and it's producing a ton of acorns, deer are probably going to be going to that tree because there's less options available. Overall, that's probably a net negative for the deer as far as less food production, but can be a big positive for hunters if you happen to do the legwork up front and find the trees that are producing, that has the freshest sign. I think you can get on good deer early season that way. The second negative that kind of just comes to mind when thinking about a low water year is just access. And that's, particularly for lake hunters like myself. If you like to boat into areas, depending upon what lake you hunt, the lakes that we're gonna be hunting down in Arkansas, it doesn't have as much of an effect if the water's high or low, because it's a deep water lake. It's not like you're hunting river bottom type stuff. But some of the lakes I hunt here in Missouri, it does have a bigger effect as far as access. These are shallower water lakes, and some of the river arms that I get onto, they don't hold a lot of water. So boating into particular spots could be a challenge. Now that's 2A, if you will, is actually just boating to the particular spot. Then if you were able to get your boat into a particular spot, what's the vegetation look like on the bank? The vegetation grows super, super thick in the river bottoms when there's a low water year. So if there's no water covering that ground during the growing season, that vegetation will get as tall as my ceiling. I mean, some of it does seem impassable. I have found some areas on those tall vegetation spots that I could slip into, and I've got them all marked. But I think, although, you know, less access would be a negative, right, to most people because you can't get to your favorite spot or whatever, to me it's a positive because I have learned those lakes, I've figured out where the access points are, and or if I haven't yet, you know, I'm willing to make that trek. So my third and final thought, and this is again kind of lake specific. Again, the lake we hunt in Arkansas, this isn't going to play that big of a role, but the lake I hunt here in Missouri, it does play a huge role. If it's a high water year and there's water sitting in the big river bottoms and it's covering up that ground during the growing season, that has not had enough sunlight. That vegetation is going to be, you know, like this. And I've talked about this before on the channel. On those high water years, they use those bottoms as like a food plot because there's fresh little sprouts typically around deer season because they've had a really short growing season because there's been water. And deer are not going to bed in that type of vegetation. It needs to be thicker vegetation. So they're going to go up on the ridge tops and they're going to feed their way down to the river bottom and treat it as if it's a food plot. At least that's what I've witnessed. On a drought year like we're in now, that vegetation has had all summer and that vegetation can grow, you know, huge, thick, like I just talked about on step 2. And that creates really, really good bedding habitat. And I've noticed on low water years, and that vegetation is really, really thick in those river bottoms, deer have a little bit more of a free range as to where they, you know, they kind of have their choice on where they want to bed. But a lot of the time I notice them bedding on the edge of the timber ridges and or just in the river bottom. So they're not too far from the timber, just in the river bottom and the thick stuff. There's like a flood zone on the bottom of those ridges where no vegetation ever grows. And I consider that on a drought year like a food plot. It's usually just bare soil right there, and the deer are usually bedding in those river bottoms on a drought year, and they just come right up. You know, they might travel 30 to 50 yards to get into that little flood zone, and there's usually fresh acorns right there. It's easy for them to find. It's right on the top of the soil, and they can just sit there and eat acorns all night. Now, that's not to say that every deer is bedding in the river bottoms on a drought year. Whether it's a drought year or not, that little flood zone where that timber is open, that is a great area. Anyways, those are some of my thoughts on some early season drought year tactics. On a drought year especially, find the acorn producing trees and hunt there with the sign and figure out where they're bedding. Now the drought, in my instance where I hunt, the drought can affect the bedding. But whether it's a drought year or not, these are all things that apply to any type of season. I think they're just more amplified during a drought season. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that, found that somewhat informational. I am going to be doing some new videos here. I'm gonna be doing a video on a new site setup that I got. I'm working with a couple new companies this year. Maybe a new saddle is still sitting in my box. So I might be doing an unboxing and kind of a first view of that saddle. So thank you guys again for watching. Go down there, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Peace.